In the Central Archives of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, in Fond 217, Inventory 1217, File 32, a political report from the head of the political department of the Leningrad Front, dated June 1, 1942, is stored. On yellowed paper stamped "Secret," a dry text is recorded. The document states, "On May 31st at 17:30, a football match took place at the Dynamo Stadium between the Dynamo Masters team and the team of the Leningrad Stalin Metal Plant representing the N-Sky Aviation Plant. The match ended with a score of 6-0 in favor of Dynamo. Up to 300 spectators were present, consisting of wounded soldiers and workers not on shift. During the game, the stadium's infrastructure was subjected to artillery shelling by the enemy. 3 152mm shells exploded near the reserve field. There were no casualties. This document, along with the directive of the Kiev City Commissariat of the Occupation Authorities dated July 12, 1942, on the regulations for sports competitions, serves as the starting point for a detailed reconstruction of the phenomenon of football matches under conditions of extreme military confrontation. Before we proceed to a minute-by-minute analysis and review of combat action logbooks, subscribe to the channel. This will help us continue working with primary sources, find rare documents, and create quality historical content for a thinking audience. To understand the conditions in which the events of the spring and summer of 1942 unfolded, it is necessary to conduct an audit of the material technical base and resource potential of Leningrad and occupied Kiev. By May 1942, Leningrad had endured the first, most severe winter of the siege. Civilian losses from starvation, according to official registry office data, exceeded 600,000 people. The daily ration for workers was increased to 350 grams of bread as of December 25, 1941, and for office workers and dependents to 200 grams. In April 1942, the restoration of tram services began, for which it was necessary to launch Substation Number 2. The city's energy potential was provided by a cable laid on the bottom of Lake Ladoga, with a capacity of up to 15 megawatts. The physical condition of the players at the time of the decision to hold the match was classified by the front's medical service as second- and third-degree dystrophy. Most match participants were on special provisions in military units or received additional work coupons under the engineering technical personnel category at defense plants. In occupied Kiev, the economic situation was determined by the directives of Reichskommissar Erich Koch. The city was under the administration of the General Commissariat. Food supply for the local population was handled on a residual basis. A ration card system was introduced. The bread distribution norm was 200 grams per week per person for non-working individuals. Those working at enterprises serving the needs of the Wehrmacht received up to 400 grams of bread per day and a bowl of millet soup. Football players of Kiev's Dynamo and the locomotive depot were employed at Kiev Bread Factory No. 1 as laborers and loaders at the request of the factory director, Joseph Kordik. This provided them with a minimal diet, allowing them to maintain basic physical functions for performing heavy manual labor loading flour. The decision to hold a football match in Leningrad was made at the level of the Military Council of the Leningrad Front, under the chairmanship of Lieutenant General Kozin. The operational situation at the end of May 1942 was characterized by a stabilized front line, but constant artillery raids by the 18th German Army of General Lindemann. Positions of the German heavy artillery were located in the areas of Bezobotnoye and Krasnoye Selo, at a distance of 14 to 18 kilometers from the city center. The front headquarters pursued a specific operational tactical objective: to demonstrate to the enemy's reconnaissance assets the garrison's operational capability and the stability of the rear. The informational effect was intended to counter German radio intelligence data about the loss of combat capability of the units inside the encirclement. The search for surviving football players was assigned to State Security Captain Viktor Bychkov. Inquiries were sent to the personnel departments of the NKVD and the Active Army. By May 15, 1942, 11 players from the pre-war Dynamo roster had been gathered. Defender Valentin Fedorov was recalled from a coastal defense unit of the Baltic Fleet. Forward Arkady Alov arrived from a hospital after being wounded. Midfielder Alexander Fedorov was on barrack duty at the police department. Team captain Nikolai Fedorov served in a destruction battalion. The assembly of the second team was entrusted to the management of the Leningrad metal plant. It was not possible to find the full roster of the LMZ footballers, as some employees had been evacuated with equipment to the Urals in August 1941, and some had fallen in battle as part of People's Militia divisions. The team, named N-Sky Zavod, Nth Plant, included players from the pre-war Zenit, Spartak, and factory athletes: Anatoly Mishuk, Alexander Zyablikov, Alexei Lebedev. The Chronicle of May 31, 1942, in Leningrad was recorded in weather observation logs and MPVO reports. The air temperature was plus 16 degrees Celsius, with variable cloudiness and a northwesterly wind of 3 to 5 meters per second. At 1600 hours, the players arrived at the Dynamo Stadium on Krestovsky Island. Due to the lack of transport, most participants walked from their locations, covering distances of 5 to 9 kilometers. A physiological examination conducted by the team doctor before taking the field recorded the players' average weight at 52 to 56 kilograms, compared to a pre-war norm of 72 to 75 kilograms. Their resting pulse was 90 beats per minute. The match began at 17:30 hours. The duration of the halves was reduced by mutual agreement to 30 minutes instead of the standard 45. This decision was dictated solely by considerations of conserving the participants' physical strength. Substitutions were not provided for, as there were no reserve players available. The stadium field was damaged by shell fragments. Craters near the penalty area had been filled with sand and tamped down by a Komsomol brigade 3 hours before the start of the match. The match was officiated by former all-union category referee Nikolai Usov. In the first half, the dynamics of the game were determined by the Dynamo players' superior teamwork. In the 12th minute, Arkady Alov opened the scoring with a close-range shot. By the 20th minute, the pace of the game slowed due to the physical exhaustion of the factory team's players. Due to hypoxia and a lack of glycogen in their muscle tissues, the players were forced to take long pauses between plays. Before the end of the first half, Dynamo scored another goal. During the break, the players refused to sit down, fearing they would not be able to stand up again due to muscle cramps. They spent the 10-minute rest period standing, consuming warm water with added saccharin. In the second half, Dynamo's advantage became overwhelming. The players of N-Sky Zavod could not keep up with covering defensive zones. 4 more goals were scored. At 18:40 hours, the match ended. The teams left the field on their own, helping each other to reach the locker rooms. The match was not broadcast on the radio to the city to avoid drawing the attention of enemy artillery to the stadium area. A recording of the game was made on magnetic tape and broadcast the next day, June 1st, in a radio program for the troops of the Leningrad Front and the city's population. German radio interception posts in Gatchina recorded the broadcast, as reflected in the intelligence reports of the 18th Army dated June 2nd, which suggested that the USSR might be using old canned recordings for disinformation. Let us shift the analytical focus to occupied Kyiv. The chronology of events here covers the period from June to August 1942. The start team, formed at Bakery No. 1, consisted primarily of players from Kyiv's Dynamo and several footballers from Lokomotiv. The members were Nikolai Trusevich, Alexei Klimenko, Ivan Kuzmenko, Mikhail Sviridovsky, Nikolai Korotkich, Fyodor Tyuchev, Mikhail Putistin, Makar Goncharenko, Vladimir Balakin, Vasily Sukharev. The series of matches was sanctioned by the Physical Culture and Sports section of the city administration, headed by Professor Bialetsky. The administration's goal was to create the appearance of normalization of public life under the German protectorate. The first match took place on June 7, 1942, at the Start Stadium on Kerosina Street. The opponent was the team of the Ukrainian Sports Society Rukh. Start won with a score of 7-2. This was followed by a series of games with military units of the occupying forces. On June 21st, the team of Hungarian garrison units was defeated 6-2. On July 5th, a combined team of Romanian troops score 11-0. On July 17th, the German team PTS, Post, Telegraph, Telephone, consisting of employees of military communications institutions, score 6-2. On July 19th, a rematch with the Hungarian team MSG Wall, score 5-1. According to staff documents from the rear of Army Group South, these defeats negatively affected the discipline and authority of the military personnel among the local population. Because of this, the sports department of the Commandant's office decided to field a more prepared unit against Start. On August 6, 1942, the first match against the team Flakelf took place. This team was assembled from personnel of anti-aircraft defense units, anti-aircraft batteries, and aviation technical units stationed at the airfield in Giuliani. The Flakelf players had regular military rations, a training regimen, and an advantage in physical conditioning. However, the match on August 6th ended with a victory for Start 5-1. The German command demanded a rematch, which was scheduled for August 9, 1942. It is this meeting that has entered historiography as the death match. Let us conduct a critical analysis of archival sources concerning the match of August 9th. In Soviet post-war literature, the thesis became established that before the match, a German officer with the rank of colonel entered the dressing room of the Soviet footballers and, under threat of execution, demanded they lose the match. A study of the documents of the Kyiv Commandant's office and order logbooks shows no direct written orders of this kind. The German officer performing the duties of the match referee did indeed enter the dressing room, but his demands, according to the recollections of survivors Makar Goncharenko and Mikhail Sviridovsky, boiled down to observing the rules of the game and the obligatory greeting of the opponent in the established manner. The match on August 9th began at 1700 at the Zenit Stadium. The match report has not survived, but the course of the game has been reconstructed from the memories of eyewitnesses. The Germans opened the scoring, taking advantage of a mistake by goalkeeper Nikolai Trusevich after a shot by a Flakelf forward. Before halftime, Ivan Kuzmenko equalized with a long-range shot, and then Makar Goncharenko scored 2 goals, putting Start ahead, 3-1. In the second half, the Germans intensified physical pressure. 2 Soviet players were incapacitated due to harsh tackles. However, substitutions were again not provided for by the tournament rules. The match ended with a score of 5-3 in favor of Start. We will conduct a detailed audit of the discrepancies in the sources. The first key discrepancy concerns the immediate arrest of the players after the match on August 9th. A number of journalistic articles claimed that the football players were taken to Babin Yar directly from the stadium in their sports uniforms. This is refuted by archival payroll records from Bakery No. 1. The players continued to work at the enterprise even after August 9th. Moreover, on August 16th, they played another match against the Rook team and won with a score of 8-0. The arrests began only on August 18, 1942. From Gestapo documents discovered after the liberation of Kyiv, it follows that the reason for the arrest was not the fact of victory in the football match itself, but a denunciation by a factory employee about the connections of a number of players with the NKVD. Nikolai Korotkych was identified as a career state security officer, which led to intensive interrogations and his death in the Gestapo dungeons in October 1942. The other players were sent to the Sirets concentration camp. The second discrepancy concerns the reasons for the death of the players in the Sirets camp in February 1943. The execution of Nikolai Trusevich, Ivan Kuzmenko, and Alexei Klimenko on February 24, 1943, had no direct causal connection with the match against Flakelf. Based on reports from the Underground City Committee of the CPBU, it has been established an act of sabotage occurred in the camp's auto repair shops, where prisoners burned or damaged several trucks belonging to the commandant's office. In response, the camp commandant, SS Sturmbannführer Paul Radomski, ordered a punitive action to shoot every 3rd or every 10th prisoner in the line. Among the randomly selected prisoners were 3 football players. This fact points to the systemic terror of the occupation authorities, not to revenge for a sports defeat. The third discrepancy is related to the technical parameters of the Leningrad match. In the memoirs of some participants, it was claimed that the game took place at the Kirov Stadium on Krestovsky Island. In fact, the Kirov Stadium was not completed by June 1942. Its bowl was used to position anti-aircraft artillery of the 2nd Air Defense Corps. The match took place at the Dynamo Stadium on Dynamo Avenue, Building 44. Ground photography, taken by frontline correspondent Rafael Mazalev on May 31st, clearly captures the characteristic stands and structures of this particular sports facility. Analyzing the command's decisions from the perspective of the charters and manuals in force at that time, the holding of matches was part of a broader operational task of camouflage and disinformation. The Red Army had the Manual for Camouflage of Ground Forces, NM 42. According to its provisions, demonstrating normal peaceful life in the frontline zone is an effective way to mislead the enemy regarding the real strength of troops and their plans. Holding a sporting event required concentrating people in one location, which violated the MPVO, Local Air Defense, instructions on dispersing the population. This was a conscious risk taken by the Military Council, justified by strategic goals. The headquarters of the German 18th Army received data from aerial reconnaissance, Focke-Wulf 189 reconnaissance aircraft, which recorded the movement of groups of people in the area of Krestovsky Island. But due to the absence of heavy equipment and artillery in that grid square, the targets were not classified as a priority for a mass air raid. In occupied Kiev, the administration's actions were regulated by the guidelines for the administration of the occupied Eastern Territories. The permission to hold matches granted by General Commissioner Kurt Eberhard, was aimed at stabilizing the labor force. The occupying authority sought to reduce the level of partisan activity within the city limits by providing the population with legal forms of leisure. However, the miscalculation in planning by the German sports department lay in underestimating the socio-psychological factor. Every victory of the local team over representatives of the Wehrmacht or Allied forces was perceived by the population as a symbolic act of de-occupation, which reduced the effectiveness of German propaganda and strengthened the position of the underground. Let us consider the statistical indicators of logistical support for the match participants. In Leningrad, after May 31st, all participants of the game received an additional incentive. They were allocated a one-time special ration, which included 100 grams of canned meat, 50 grams of cereal, and 20 grams of fats. For the conditions of May 1942, this caloric amount, about 600 kilocalories, was crucial for the recovery of muscle fibers after the endured exertion. The players were returned to their units. Forward Evgeny Arkhangelsky continued his service in the repair workshops, restoring KV-1 tanks for the needs of the 42nd Army. Defender Valentin Fedorov returned to his patrol boat of the Baltic Fleet. The experience of May 31st showed that the physical potential of the garrison personnel, with minimal adjustment to their rations, allowed them to perform high-intensity tasks. In Kiev, after the execution of some players in February 1943, the surviving members of the START team, Makar Goncharenko, Mikhail Sviridovsky, and Georgy Timofeyev, managed to escape from the camp during the relocation of a work detail within the city limits. They hid on the outskirts of Kiev until the arrival of units of the 1st Ukrainian Front under the command of Army General Vatutin on November 6, 1943. After the liberation of the city, the surviving athletes underwent checks at filtration points of the People's Commissariat of Defense. No evidence of collaboration with the occupation authorities that caused damage to the defense capability of the USSR was found in their actions. They were demobilized and recruited for the restoration of the sports infrastructure of the Ukrainian SSR. The dry summary of the conducted research allows for the following conclusions. The football matches in Leningrad and Kiev in 1942 cannot be viewed solely as sporting events. They were specific instruments of ideological and military psychological confrontation. In Leningrad, the holding of the match was a successful disinformation operation against the enemy and strengthened the morale and combat readiness of the troops within the blockaded perimeter. The expenditure of food resources on supporting the players was fully compensated by the operational tactical effect achieved. In Kiev, the series of matches of the START team demonstrated the inability of the occupation administration to fully control public sentiment, even under the harsh police regime of the Gestapo and SD. Losses among the Kiev footballers amounted to 4 personnel put out of action: Korotkik, Trusevich, Kuzmenko, Klimenko. This was a direct consequence of the general punitive policy of Nazi Germany in the occupied territories, where any autonomous activity by the local population that went beyond the prescribed directives was considered a potential threat to the security of the rear areas of Army Group South. The material and technical base of the stadiums in both cities suffered significant damage. In Leningrad from artillery strikes, in Kiev during combat operations upon the retreat of German troops. The reconstruction carried out based on combat logs, civil defense reports, and captured German documents allows for these events to be cleansed of subsequent ideological layers and establishes their precise chronological and factual framework.